Anukriti, you joined?
Yes, sir, I have joined.
Okay. I think you should also make this announcement that the unknown user should name themselves.
Okay.
Tell that.
The same name
I think
that
they can do that.
registered to?
Whichever any participant joining as unknown user, we will remove them from the meet. They'll have to name themselves and get in. Okay, that
Okay.
helps us.
Okay, sir. So do I tell participants streaming live from YouTube that they need to enter their name and institution name in the comments?
Yeah, let them do that.
Okay, sir. Sir, also Q&A sessions, should they comment?
Yeah, let them put their questions there. We'll pick it up questions from there.
And here I'll tell them to unmute themselves?
Yeah.
Okay,
Here
sir.
they are unmute.
Okay, sir.
So Michelle has joined. Merlin.
Yes, sir.
In case Sumichelle doesn't turn up, you will moderate the session,
Yes,
okay? Whatever questions that are there in the YouTube live will be sent a screenshot in the group. You can read that to the speaker, okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Soumya, I believe the YouTube link is shared. You can mail to the participants.
Yes, sir.
The help of your juniors. Welcome and good morning, Dr. Putul and Dr. Kavya, staff from Department of Zoology.
Sir?
Good morning.
Good morning. All the best, sir. Keep rocking.
Yeah, we should.
Good morning, everybody. This is
Good
Putul.
morning. Kiran sir, Anukriti, we'll start sharp at 10. We'll proceed with 10.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Shukumar sir, good morning.
Jayashankar,
Sir, good morning,
good morning.
sir.
Am I late?
No. 10 will start sharp, sir.
Okay.
People are still joining. YouTube
Yeah, yeah.
live streaming also has started.
Oh,
So there'll be people there also.
yeah, yeah.
Morning, Viola.
Viola, good morning.
I think she didn't hear both of us.
I think sometimes the microphone gets muted, man. So we can't really realize.
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Who's this?
Sir, I'm
Santosh.
Santosh.
Santosh, our speaker, first speaker.
What's your
Okay, okay,
student,
okay.
sir?
Good morning. How are you, Santosh?
I'm good, sir. Thank you very much. How are you, sir?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you, sir.
All 5 speakers back to their
College.
Alma
best
mater.
today. Alma mater.
Good to see our own students coming up.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the opportunity, sir.
No, man, we are really proud. Actually, you people have come up to this level.
It all began there, sir, from college.
Thomas sir has joined.
No, sir, no.
Okay.
Jayashankar, sir, I keep getting this notification like admit waiting in the lobby. Is it like
Yeah,
quite
I'm
normal?
doing that. I'm admitting.
Okay, sir.
I'm going on clicking that only.
Fine, sir.
Myself and Soumya is also doing it parallelly.
Okay.
Yeah, even I am doing it.
Okay, sir.
Continuously, students will be joining now.
Now, okay, it is exactly 10. Looking at the number, we'll wait 2 minutes. Kiran sir, 2 more minutes.
Sir, sure, sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay, Anukriti, Kiran sir, Shukumar sir will start then.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, start Anukriti.
Yes, sir. A warm greetings to everyone. This is the international webinar on career prospects and on studying abroad and career prospects for life science students. I am Anukriti and This is the fourth in line webinar organized by Natural Science Association, St. Joseph's College, in association with the Placement Cell, St. Joseph's College, in the interest of youngsters willing to pursue their career abroad as well as students pursuing their career in India. I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of the management of St. Joseph's College, Natural Science Association, and Placement Office, St. Joseph's College. Now I would like to welcome Professor Kiran Jeevan, PRO, St. Joseph's College, to give the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anukriti. I hope I'm audible. Yes.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of our rector, Father Swebert De Silva, our principal, Father Victor Lobo, the HOD of the Department of Zoology, Dr. Thomas, and the convener of this program, Dr. Jayashankar, a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this international webinar hosted by the Natural Science Association and the Placement Office of St. Joseph's College. This is a very important webinar and is the need of the hour. And we are so grateful to all our speakers who have joined us today. Mr. Santosh, Mr. Avinash, Mr. Chirag, Mr. Aditya, and Mr. Nithin, all whom are our former students of St. Joseph's College. What a joy to have all of you join us this morning. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm sure your experience and learning will be a great source of inspiration to all our students who are tuning in for this webinar. A warm welcome to all the participants from St. Joseph's College and across the country who have joined us this morning. I'm sure this webinar will open new perspectives to all of you. It is important for all of us to look beyond the horizon, and I'm sure this webinar will be a pivotal opportunity for all of you to plan your career and future prospects. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you to this webinar, and I'm sure it is going to be a great learning experience for all of you. A warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we begin this webinar, there are some general guidelines that we want you to abide by. Participants are requested to mute themselves so as to avoid any static or background noise. Participants who are entering with their unknown names in Microsoft Teams will be removed. You can rejoin with the name that you registered with. Participants who are streaming this event from YouTube are requested to type in their name and the name of their institution in the comment section. And participants who are streaming this session from Microsoft Teams can unmute themselves during the question and answer session and ask the question. And participants who are live streaming this event from YouTube can also ask their questions by typing them in the comment section. Now I will request Merlin to introduce our speaker for today.
Good morning. I'm Merlin, a member of the Natural Science Association. On behalf of the Natural Science Association, the Department of Zoology, and the Placement Officer, I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Santosh Arun. Mr. Santosh is a highly motivated and enthusiastic researcher with expertise in cell and molecular biology and biochemistry. He completed his MSc in Advanced Biochemistry from the University of Madras, Chennai, and BSc from our very own college. As a victorious researcher, he has filed a patent on novel composition to detect E. coli in liquid sample and has also published 6 international publications. Some of his affluent achievements include Best Oral Presentation Award, Senior Research Fellow Award ICMR, and EMBO Short-Term Fellow. He has been a part of some projects like cancer metabolism, possible therapeutic implications, molecular mechanisms, diagnostic kits of disease detection, and secondary metabolites for cancer detection. His inquisitiveness has enabled him to gain skills in cell culture, PCR, Western blot, GraphPad Prism, and Seahorse XF Analyzer. We heartily welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, first of all, I would like to thank the college, St. Joseph's College, Reverend Fathers, Rector and Principal, and my professors at the Department of Zoology, especially Dr. Jayashankar sir. Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me into this program. And I would also like to thank the head of the department, Professor Thomas sir. And I think we also have Dr. Shivkumar sir. Thank you very much, sir. And I also extend my thanks to the conveners, Professor Kiran Jeevan sir, placement officer, and the organizers of this event, National Science Association. And all the departments of at St. Joseph's College. So with that, I will begin my presentation. Let me just open my slide. Jayashankar sir, do you see my the slide?
Yeah, it is visible, Santosh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Today's topic, I wish to discuss with you all rather than talking about this topic because I believe it is very crucial for graduate and postgraduate students who are still in the college to understand what are the career prospects that they have so that they can actually choose it before they graduate out. And so I would, I have structured my talk into these three topics, and I will give an overview of all these so that you get an overview of all these topics. So the first thing that I'll talk about is research opportunities that are available for graduate and postgraduate students, and also the opportunities that you might want to explore in higher education. And I would also tell you some simple ways that you can use to prepare yourself when you are still a graduate student. So when you're still in the college, the first and foremost thing that you need to do is identify your career. Like, do not wait until the last year, because most of us have done it in the past, and then we don't want others to do the same mistake. So that you are in time with other peers along with you. So first thing is you need to identify your career. So once you've identified your career, then you can try and learn about the requirements. These do not require you to have a degree in hand. By this time, you can actually start checking on eligibility. If you're eligible, do you need a bachelor's degree? Is it sufficient, or you also need a master's degree? Or do you require a PhD to take up a career in that field? It's very, very important. So once you figure that out, you need to check what skills that you can develop while you are still in college. So the next thing is, once you've identified your career, you need to have short and long-term goals. So if you ever attend an interview, probably in a company or in academia, they will definitely ask you to these two goals. What are your long-term and short-term goals? I believe these two goals should be aligned with each other. So setting a goal is very, very crucial. This happens early before you even decide as soon as you decide your career. And then you have to make plans, and persistence is very, very important. You have to keep working on it to reach the goal. And I always suggest that you have more than one plan. Plan A, in case it doesn't work out for some reason, you should have a plan B, which you can directly switch to. You don't really have to wait until plan A is collapsed and then look for another option. So I suggest that you have more than one plan for a career that you would want to take up in future. So typically your long-term goal should be aimed in like 5 to 10 years from now, and that should actually give you a very good start. So here I'm giving you an overview of career options that are available in science. As a science graduate, you can get into these sectors. The first sector would be academia. So you can either get into teaching or both, teaching and research. You can directly get into universities, colleges, training institutes. There are private training institutes like JEE and NEET coaching centers. There also you have career prospects as a life science student or graduate. And also, if you want to get into academia, I think now the new regulations suggest that you must have a PhD And also you should have cleared the CSE or UGC net, which is also crucial. So if you plan your career into academia, I think you should start preparing for your exams right from now, and also try looking at institutes that you would want to complete your PhD and masters from. And the second sector would be into research into science, into government organizations. You can be placed as a scientist in any of these government organizations. It could be either a full research job, or it can also be research management jobs. You have UPSC, DRDO, DST, DBT. These are the government agencies that currently recruit people. I believe there could be more, and you can start checking on it by yourself. And you can also become a scientist if you get into research and development into various companies like Biocon, Syngene, Pfizer. I've listed only a few in here, but there are like hundreds and hundreds of companies that you can start looking at. And on the right hand side of my slide, I've also given some tips that you can, how well you can utilize or plan to achieve a career in science. So you can just follow up later. And other, not just research job, you're also eligible to get into other job being a science graduate. You have various contract research organizations. They work for somebody else on contract basis. They perform research and then provide output results. It could be for government agencies or for private companies. And you can also get into manufacturing and production being a science graduate, and only you guys are eligible. So few examples include any kind of upstream or downstream processing, including antibody production or vaccine production. And the instrument manufacturing companies, say for example PCR or any Western blot interface instrument, definitely requires it to have an application as a user interface, for which they definitely require life science.
Santosh, sorry to interrupt. Some participants wanted to be a bit slow.
Oh, fine, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir. Right, so you can also become an application specialist in any of these manufacturing companies which manufacture scientific equipments. And if you're good at language, and if you really wanted to take up something in writing or something into language, you also have various publishing companies, and there are several scientific editing companies. Few examples include Thomson Reuters, Nature, Elsevier. All of them have their branches in India, and you might very well be placed abroad also if you get into any of these jobs. And you can also become an editor in national and international journals. So in writing, you can also become a content writer. I think you can even have your own startup doing some good science writing, or you can also become a part of any newspapers or any media that definitely does science. They definitely recruit only science graduates. And there are opportunities in the international organization which many of us do not know, and DevNet Jobs India is a real good source for it. One of my friends suggested that to me. And you can actually start looking at job opportunities in WHO, United Nations, and there are also NGOs. I have given few, at least two. These are actually in Bangalore, I believe. These NGOs, they are into policy making, and they also are into protection of the natural resources and environment, which constantly require graduate students for project management and other stuff. And other sectors for life science jobs include pollution board. Like every state in India definitely has a pollution control board, for which they require science graduates. And you also have forensics, agriculture, animal farms. You have variety of fields which you can get into soon after. Probably you can decide this once you finish your bachelor's degree, and when you are taking up your master's degree, you can try and zero down on any of these sectors that you want to take up in future, and then you can start preparing yourself. And you can also become a lab technician in hospitals, even in colleges. In abroad, it really pays a huge salary that is equivalent to a postdoc salary or a PhD salary. So lab technician does all the work of what a PhD and a postdoc does, and still they do research. So these are the opportunities that are available in various sectors for life sciences. Talking about higher education, if you are into BSc right now, you can try and get an MS or MTech abroad. I think many of the top students, at least in my college, prefer this option, and then most of them usually get a scholarship, a fully funded scholarship. In fact, if they have a high GRE score and TOEFL and IELTS. So these are the things that I think you need to concentrate because you don't have to really wait until the last year to prepare for your GRE exams, because you may not get a slot, and even if you get a slot, you may not get these scores within like few months, and many students miss out on summer admission or fall admission because they do not have these scores in hand with them. So if you start preparing, if you're in the BSc 3-year degree course, you can start preparing for the GRE exam and give the GRE exam at the end of your before the end of your final semester, the TOEFL exam, because it takes at least 1 month for you to get the test results and reports, and again 15 days for it to reach the respective institute, for which you need to have enough time so that you do not really waste 1 year soon after your BSc or Masters. And other fellowship includes TAD, which actually pays a decent stipend for living in Germany, and you also have Swiss Government Excellence Scholarship. At least I had met one of my friends who was in my previous lab at Switzerland, who had come from Russia, and she had gotten this Swiss Government Excellence Scholarship, and she was paid a good salary with which she was able to manage all by herself without having to spend or take a loan on education. So what they really look for is you need to have a high percentage or a higher CGPA. I believe if on a 10 scale point, you think anything about 9.5 would be fine. And many students I've seen 9.8, for sure they get into higher education abroad with a fully funded scholarship. And if you want to get into IITs or IASC soon after your BSc, you have this JAM examination. You can take up MS in biotechnology or other courses that are available. And you also have the GATE option. This is mostly for the MTech people. If somebody is cleared GATE, if they're pursuing MTech, the AICT offers a 12,000 per month stipend for the 2 years of study period, and which is like earn while you learn. And you also have this is specific for IITs, IIT students who are finishing their graduation, post-graduation from there. You have the Prime Minister Research Fellowship Award, which pays, I think, about 80,000 to 1 lakh per month for doing PhD in IITs. And even if you go to other private colleges or universities, you are still eligible for JRF or SRF position, and you will be paid while still you're doing your PhD. And the current salary is in the range of about 31,000 to 35,000, for which you need to have cleared any of these exams. DBT or ICMR, CSER regularly conduct exams for JRF. If you have cleared those exams, then you are eligible, and then you get a salary paid throughout your tenure of the PhD. Soon after your BSc, you can also take up short-term project assistant positions. These are advertised positions that are available in individual principal investigators lab. So for becoming a SRF, you also have the direct SRF offered by ICMR and CSIR, for which you need to have at least 2 years of research experience. So you can make use of being a project assistant or JRF before you become an SRF. So these are the academic research positions that are available. You can transition into industry even after becoming a SRF or JRF. So now what skills that you need to develop during this period is very, very important. So now that you have identified your career, and then you know what is the eligibility criteria, and you also know what are the requirements of the job in terms of skills, I have categorized at least 2 skills, soft skills and technical skills. Soft skill begins from writing an email. Now, anybody can write an email today because everybody has access to it, but then it is really not easy to convince somebody who's going to pay you if you want to get an MS or if you want to get a PhD. And it is really difficult to write an email. I think you have to invest a good amount of time in trying to write a good email along with a cover letter. The statement of purpose in cover letter plays a major role if you want to take up a MS position abroad. And if you want to take up a PhD, your research statement and your research proposal is definitely a plus, and it is really mandatory for you to have a good research proposal. And right now, if you probably look at your CV, you probably do not have much information filled in there. You just have, I've done my 10th year, 12th year, and BSc here, MSc here, that's it. You can actually, create a good CV by utilizing or, improving your skills while you're still in the college. And that actually, the college actually gives a great platform for you to develop on teamwork, team leading skills, and also would show you, give you a platform to demonstrate your independence and interpersonal skills. So these are the skills that anybody will definitely look for. You should be able to work in a team and also able to lead a team, and self-motivation is highly appreciated. These are few of the soft skills that they demand in industry and in academia. And it is also very, very important that you are in the good books of your professors and teachers, because when you apply for a master's or a PhD abroad, they definitely are going to ask you 3 to 4 references. So you don't have to really go and blink there and know who to ask, what to ask. So if you converse with your teachers right from your college days, if you talk to them about options, if you discuss with them about the subjects or anything for that matter, they will definitely remember you. And even if you're away from the college, like you're in another state, they will be able to write a good academic reference for you. A minute, sir. I think I'm missing, I'm sorry. Okay. And now that you have various social networking websites, you have the LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I myself personally follow. I'm sorry, is there something in that room? It's exiting out of the screen. So it is important that you start following on various company web pages, LinkedIn pages, and there are also Facebook groups for people who are preparing for exam, who are preparing for, who are already there doing PhD abroad or who are already in the industry, and they all try and discuss some common issues that otherwise you will not know. I'm really sorry about this. I think it is exiting me automatically. Okay, and if you ever have a chance to participate in a conference, an international or a state level conference, you can try and talk to somebody, could be industry personnel or could be an academic principal investigator. You can talk to them, and later when you write to them, for sure they're going to remember you. So few of my friends have done it, and they found it very, very successful, and they've obtained positions by meeting people in conferences and scientific events. Okay, the second set of skills that I want to talk about is technical skills. Before you graduate out, I think you need to have experimental techniques. Of course, we perform a lot of experiments in the lab. Yes, of course, they are all definitely helpful. Even today, the way I prepared, learn to prepare solutions, I use it today for my PhD and other research-related work. So it definitely helps. In addition to that, you also need to equip yourself with experimental techniques. You should also try and learn about quality and compliance and regulatory affairs and policy and guidelines from the government for specific industries. So can they set up an industry in such an area, or what are the eligibility criteria? How many people should be employed, or what are the quality parameters they need to follow? All these you can learn from industries, and from academic institutions. You can also learn experimental design, handle instruments, statistics, and learn to write research article, papers. So how can you do all this? How can you gain all these? You can gain these by internships. You can. I think the first and foremost contact for you should be your institute faculty. You can approach them for an in-house project. My college, many students who go abroad definitely do this. I believe that is the first step that they do if they wanted to take up a career in science. Approach your faculties and talk to them about your interest, and they're definitely going to help you about completing a project. When you complete a project, you will learn how to manage a project. You will also learn on various technical and experimental skills which will definitely help you in the future. And you can also contact government institutes. You can try and email professors at these institutes, and they are always on the lookout for students for summer internships or for a short-term project or a long-term project. There are also private research organizations and private labs which help students. They might charge you a fee. I think it is worth. At least one of my students said that she had gained some experience in a private lab, and that helped her get into a MS admission abroad. And there are also several startups. They're always offering internships because it is a win-win situation. They take advantage. I mean, they take help from you in completing their goals, and meantime you also learn their techniques and the policies. Bangalore is a good place for it, and you also have other places, Hyderabad, Chennai, and I've listed few incubation centers that mostly have startups from life sciences background. So to gain these skills in academic institutions, if you do not really get a position in the industry, you can apply for these exchange programs which are available. See, these programs I've not just listed out. I know few students who have taken up these programs, and that's why I have listed it here. And all these are really very successful. To gain all these, I think you need to have a good CV, a good statement of purpose, and a great cover letter. If you have these, I think this forms the soft skill of yours. And if you're able to achieve this, you definitely can land a position as a Fulbright Fellow in the US for a short-term period. I think about 3 to 6 months. Corona Fellowship is for 3 months. And your travel and your stay, accommodation, everything is covered, and they pay you a nice salary also. You also have, you can start planning your final year projects abroad. So if you're able to spend like 3 to 6 months at least in the lab abroad, these NTU and Corona and Fulbright Fellowship will definitely help you. And apart from this, our Indian institutes also offer summer research fellow programs, and I've listed out a few of the institutes here. In addition, you can also contact the individual labs. So if you like any research, you just talk to them, email them saying that I want to learn about this, I'm curious, or if you have an idea, go ahead and suggest to them, and they might very well invite you to the lab, and you can spend a good amount of time during your summer or winter season. Okay. Now, talking about all these, I would also want to say, what are the prospects that you have as a graduate student? If you ask a question, can I do a research while I'm still in the undergraduation or post-graduation study? Yes, that is possible. You don't really have to have real equipments or great lab to start your research at least. There are dry lab research, mostly into molecular docking, using bioinformatics tools. These are available online, and those softwares are really free. And there are YouTube lectures and video lectures where you can start watching, and you can do it yourself. I myself do it to learn bioinformatics, but I also take help from somebody who's an expert, because I should know what I'm doing, if it is right or wrong. So it is very important that you try and identify a mentor you are still in the college if you want to get into research, or if you want to gain these technical skills. So the simplest thing that you can do is to write a review article on some topic. Maybe you can, whatever interests you, could be cancer or could be diabetes, any recent improvements or any particular medicine. You can start writing a research article or review article. You have thousands of research articles available online, and they are free to access. You can talk to your mentor. I believe they will be able to help you. For example, the molecular docking studies on ACE2 receptor, where the coronavirus binds, was actually done in a dry lab research, where they performed molecular docking with known targets. So when a time where the animal models were not available, when the Jackson laboratory was still trying to revive the embryo for model for coronavirus, this was really helpful to find the receptor and the binding site. And you also have several resources online wherein you can try and elucidate the structure of protein wherein you can do a homology modeling, for which I definitely suggest that you need a mentor, so you can be an expert in bioinformatics. That could be from your institute or outside or in a private lab. It doesn't matter as long as you get your skills done. The other set is wet lab research. These require definitely some, at least minimum or basic lab setup. There are also certain things you don't really have to have a big lab setup. Say, for example, you can start extracting chemicals or components from plant using different solvent extraction system. I believe for which you definitely you need only SOx-led apparatus and rotary evaporator. So I think these do not cost much, at least the SOx-led apparatus. For rotary evaporator, you can try and contact some other institute to collaborate with the institute, and they will definitely help you out. You can also start doing anti-cancer activity of the extracted compound. You can also perform antibacterial or antifungal activity. These researches were done by the undergraduate students from our college. So, and that is why that I'm trying to stress upon these. I mean, these are really possible. There are various research scholars who try to study anti-cancer activity or antibacterial activity for the thesis. So why not you do it? It is really simple. Nothing is impossible. It may seem very sophisticated, but really it is not. If you have a proper mentor to guide, if you have resources, contact, other stuff. And you can also isolate and identify microbial strain that you see growing in a sludge or industry, or even on your mobile phone. You can grow them, and you can actually sequence them and submit it to a GenPal. Sequencing, you don't really have to have your own lab setup. There are CROs which help with the charge. I believe they charge about 3,000 to 5,000. If 4 or 5 students join together, it comes down to very less than 1,000 rupees per student, and they can start submitting. At least you will gain knowledge and also expertise. There are other areas which include anti-diabetic and neuromodulation products, for which you may require animal models. You can try and contact some central institutes where they provide you facility and also mentor you. And other stuff could be products from plant biomass. You can try making a charcoal from garbage, or at least I met one of the startups who were collecting garbage from all the apartments here in Chennai, and then they were actually making charcoal out of it. And they were selling it and making a huge profit out of it. So it is not just a lab possibility. You can also be productive if you know what to do. And there are also simple tests that you can perform. By now, I think you will all know as a life science graduates, carbohydrates, tests for protein or amino acid, which we routinely perform in our lab. And you can start studying these biochemical profile from any plant extract. And another important sector would be research area would be phytoremediation. You can use some plants to try and remove the toxic substances that are available, that are present in the environment. And there are also, you can also try and use plants to purify water. At least I know one of the teams who had participated in the competition, they had used the plant and said that they can actually clear the household water waste, and they won a 3 lakh cash prize award in a competition that I'll talk about later. So these things are possible. You can also try and look at fermentation. A different source could be from canteen waste or anything that you see that is waste, because you also have this waste to wealth approach right now going on. And there are also possibilities in trying to make a sensor to detect any kind of environment pollutants, or to a product to prevent pests. I think these are your day-to-day problems. If you see any problem, you try and think ways to resolve, give a solution to the problem, and you are definitely successful. So, in addition to what, you can also try and make some products. If you make a product or a process, you can definitely patent it. And many of our undergraduate students do it. And many of them have actually filed for patent. So it is really possible. And you can also start an entrepreneurship if you're really good at making something. So for example, sanitizers, hand wash, and mouthwash. Recently, I saw in a newspaper ad that they have something called the vegetable wash, which we never thought about. since with the corona pandemic, people, come up with various products that everybody can use, and you can definitely make a business out of it. And you also have demand for bioplastic scaffolds for bone tissue engineering. You may require some skills or help. Please go ahead and take it from some mentor. They're always available. You can also study packaging of molecule stability. These things are really possible as an undergraduate student. You don't really have to have great lab setup. You don't really have to go to a big lab, and that is why I keep stressing on these. And ways to build ink from soup. I read it in a newspaper article, and biogas from dead and decaying plants, which is again possible. And you can also try and make manure from kitchen waste. I met a startup which said they have converted the bucket into a manure converting machine. Just made some holes and let the air go inside, and then after 1 month it becomes a complete manure, and they are actually selling it. So you can also try and innovate some products while you are still being a graduate student. Okay, now knowing all these, you have to, now that you know all these, you have to prepare and execute. You need to be really productive and you need to get recognized. If you do something, make sure that that is result oriented. If you're writing a review article, go ahead and publish it. If you perform some docking studies, go ahead and publish it. So publication, paper presentation will definitely give you awards, and it will definitely add to your CV. And networking, collaborations are very, very essential at this point in time of your life. And you can also initiate a club in the college. So don't just think about joining an existing club. Can you think of initiating a new club? So there you will demonstrate you have team leading skills, and you also demonstrate that you are independent and self-motivated to do all these. And it is also important that you enroll in professional bodies. These small things actually make a lot of changes to your CV and your cover letter. So once they know that you are into all these student membership or program, you enroll themselves, then they think, okay, fine, this guy knows something in science and really wants to do science. So your chances are much higher than people who do not really want to pursue anything. So some of the simple innovations could include extract food colors from natural sources. Now we are moving towards artificial food coloring, artificial flavors. So why not try and extract something? If you find a way to do it, then you can even very well patent it. Although it is not easy, but it is not impossible. So if you have the right thought, if you have the right people to guide you through, then definitely you can also start making detergents. These things have come from the life sciences background, and you can also bake biscuits if you're good in it, make cake for diabetic or for improving memory power. So there are many students who do all these. CFTRI in Mysore, they do it. You can try and contact them for anything to do with food and other stuff. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is there are international and national level competitions wherein if you enroll in the competition, you will start working by yourself. Then you will start, getting ideas, because they usually give you a theme, so you really do not have to worry about getting a theme, where to start, and they just give you a problem statement and you have to sit and solve. So IGEM is one of the important competitions that is conducted in the US. If you enroll in it, I believe it is very expensive. About 6 lakh is the registration fee for a team of about 15 or so. You also have the DBT Able Best program. Personally, I had won 3 lakh with my team like 2 years ago for ELISA detector to detect dengue virus. I've just proposed the method. I really didn't complete the project itself, but then the method had won the prize money. And I also spoke about somebody who did phytoremediation for water purifying from household waste. They also won 3 lakh cash prize, and another team had won 5 lakh cash prize from our college, who had worked on clearing the environment toxins using some beads. So these are the possibilities. These are platforms that are available to execute your skills that you've developed. And I would also like to give you an overview of the competitive exams that are waiting you. You can take up any of these, UGC, CSA, or NET. If you clear this, you can very well be placed as a JRF, and you can also get into a college as a lecturer. And if you clear GATE exam, now DRDO scientist jobs, one of the requirements is that you must have a GATE score. Before it was not the case, now it is mandatory that you have a GATE score. So if you have a GATE score, you are also eligible to get into a job in many PSUs. And you have the DBT JRF examination, ICMR JRF. Of course, they all differ in the level of difficulty, but then if you clear any one of these exams at least, it will definitely help you somewhere. I've heard GATE exam is also valid for admissions abroad, in Singapore at least, for MS or PhD admission. So it is recognized there. You have the ASRP.NET, you have the JNU, and individual universities conduct entrance examination for masters and PhD program. So all the university conducted. So do not wait until you finish your graduation to really think where to join, what to do. Just be prepared. GRE examination and TOEFL, these will definitely take you abroad. Only the US requires you to have GRE, where in other countries, if you have a good TOEFL or IELTS score, a good score would be on TOEFL, IBT, internet-based test would be about 100 on a scale of 120. And for IELTS, it is anything about 8 or 8.5 on a scale of 10 is good score. And it varies from institute to institute, so you can go ahead and check it. And other exams, soon after your bachelor's, you can probably do is you can become a patent agent, which has opportunities in government and also in various private sectors. A company that files patent for our college charges at least 35,000, I believe, for just for filing the application, because they need to draft the patent. So you have job opportunities there. You can also postgraduate diploma courses in patent agent, and you can also get a licensing, and you can start your own company as well. You also have the Indian Forest Service. So in addition to it, I would also stress upon taking up some foreign language courses, because DRDO scientist recruitment page, I found if you have the knowledge of French or German, then the chances of you getting is really higher. Many companies like Amazon or many other companies, the international companies, if you have French or German, personally I have my friends working for these companies, and their starting package is really huge. They paid in lakhs, as a fresher, if they are really good at these languages. And you have various centers across India, you can start utilizing it. And in case if you feel that you do not have enough of content, or you don't know a subject, or you really want to learn something more, you have the NPTEL, EDX, Coursera, Harvard, Stanford, all these offers online courses, and they also offer certification. You can start, doing the online courses. So I think I have covered an overview of what options you have. You don't really have to take up all of these together. If you take up at least one of you, I think it will definitely help you to place yourself, land yourself in a career soon after your graduation or post-graduation. Right? I think I come to the end of this presentation, and thank you very much. Hello?
Yes, Santosh. Maria will take over.
Okay.
Or we'll ask Merlin. Merlin, can you moderate? So Michelle, I think, has some network issues.
The session is now open for discussion. The participants can unmute themselves and ask their questions to the speaker.
Participants, students, you have any queries of what Mr. Santosh presented, you can. ask him. There are also questions from YouTube. I believe Merlin will pick it up. Merlin, are there questions from YouTube?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Bella Hartley asks that she has taken physics, maths, and computers, and she wants to know the scope for this degree.
Okay, personally, I really don't know about physical sciences, mathematics, or computer sciences. But then I know you have chosen a great course. You can either get into physics or maths, because now they do mathematical modeling, and say the top organizations like NASA always look for people who are good at physics, maths, and computer science together. So I believe that's one of the options. There are various other organizations. So particularly, I really don't know, but there are opportunities.
Just to add on that, this is Kavya from Zoology Department. For the physics students, we also have a C.V. Raman Research Institutes in Bangalore, where they offer a lot of internship programs as well as your degrees, PhD degrees. Everything can be taken up in that institute also. You have many entrance exams like JAM and so far, so that you can get into all these research projects. Just to add on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because our theme is for life students, life science students, but again we got the physical science questions also. Okay, I believe CZ3038 wants to ask a question. You can unmute and proceed.
Good morning. I wanted to ask that in India we have like 3 years of undergraduate programs, but in foreign it seems like there is a 4 year of graduation program.
Yeah.
So how if suppose if we intend to apply abroad, so that 1 year will it be will it like depend on whether we get like if we complete duration of 3 years, so will that affect us entering into a master's program abroad?
No, it doesn't affect you at all. It doesn't affect you at all. You are still eligible. So all that they see is equivalency program. So if you have done something equivalent to what their curriculum says, then definitely you're eligible. And there are many students who had applied and gotten, even with the 3 years program from our country. So it is possible.
Also, one more thing. Is 1 year of internship required before we, like say, join into some master's program, like in abroad?
No, I don't say that. I would personally suggest do not give a career gap. Do not give a gap in your academia. Soon after your BSc, you can definitely take up a master's. These internships will definitely help you to gain some skills. Again, if you look at the internship that I've listed, they probably offer from 15 days to 1 month or 2 months. So you don't really have to have 1 year internship. No, not necessarily.
Thank you.
Santosh, this is Shiv Kumar.
Hi, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi. why don't you throw some light on interdisciplinary work which can be done, for example, like physical science students working towards natural sciences, or natural sciences student getting into some physical science branches in research or in higher studies or something like that?
Definitely, sir. Because now one particular example that I can talk about is the current pandemic has, the government of India has put up an advertisement seeking PPEs which has nanoparticles covered, which has antiviral and antimicrobial properties. So in such a case, physical sciences background is definitely needed for designing a PPE. To determine what materials they use, and you also need somebody from the life sciences background to know if the particle that they are using is actually is repelling or is against the microorganisms. And there are also several sectors, especially into nanotechnology, where they try and pack molecules using some materials. So you definitely need material science or physical sciences background, and along with it you need somebody's expertise from life sciences to study how they really interact. Even the space shuttle, they also have people working together on physical sciences and life sciences to see what kind of materials are definitely needed, so that we don't bring in anything from the outer space into our Earth. So there are a lot of other opportunities available. So the interdisciplinary, I believe the new education policy also suggests that we have interdisciplinary related research in future.
Thank you, Santosh.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, there's another question from YouTube.
Okay.
And Sharon wants to know the career opportunities for medical microbiology.
Okay, medical microbiology, the first thing that I can get into is immediately you can get into any of the labs in the hospitals, which definitely have an option for a medical microbiologist, probably as a pathologist in the pathology lab to prepare the reports of the patients. And you can also get into any of these academic institutions, do your own research. And I believe you also have opportunities in the food sector because they definitely check the quality of the food, the shelf life, stability, and all that. So I believe microbiology is very, very essential in any part. So it's mostly into medical. So she can obviously get placed in a hospital or into academic institutions.
Pulkit wants to know what can he do after PCB except going in medical stream?
Physics, chemistry, biology, right? He can take up anything. He can take up anything. He can go into material science, nanotechnology. You can go into chemical engineering also. That is another, one of my friends had done chemical engineering thing after CBZ. So chemical engineering offers a lot of opportunities. You can also become you can join the Wetland Research Institute. Even IISc has its own department. So you can get into any of those. It is not mandatory that you have to come into life sciences. You can actually switch into some other interdisciplinary program. But then one problem is that if you ever wanted to come back to academia, or if you are applying for any government job that is related to science, then they look at cross major, or they want you to have a single stream. So, in that way it doesn't make you eligible. So you need to really look at the eligibility criteria for if you're getting into government organizations or into academia. If in the industry, I think it doesn't matter. I think they take up people from interdisciplinary background.
So there's another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you suggest 1-year MS program abroad? And how is MRES different from MSc?
MR, yes, I'm not sure. 1 year MS, I think it is again a degree, but again, you have to look at the career prospect. Like I said, if you're coming back to India, now we have this structure 10 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus. So you see that you do not break it if you are coming back to India for a position. Otherwise, if you're seeking a job abroad, then it shouldn't be a problem. It depends on the eligibility criteria. But I would suggest that it is safe to take up what most other people take up. If there's a 2-year MS program, just go ahead and take it up.
Good morning, sir. I have one question.
Yep, good morning.
Sir, can you please tell me what is the career opportunity in biotechnology?
Biotechnology has vast of opportunities. As soon as you graduate out, you can go into any of these pharma companies. You can also take up a course, higher education course in BTech pharma. You can get into academy, of course. Say upstream, downstream processing. All these requires biotechnologists who knows or who have studied all the calculations and who knows about all stuff. You can also get into genetic engineering, and you can also get into any kind of manufacturing like antibody or vaccine manufacturing. That is really possible because biotechnology, they study a lot of technology related courses, so they have a lot of options available.
Thank you, sir.
Somebody, Nischita Nagappa, has raised their hand. You can unmute and ask the question, please.
I think that's all the questions, sir.
Yeah, or probably Santosh, if there are questions, there are some more coming on the YouTube. If you could stay after Avinash, then we'll take up some more questions after Avinash finishes. Okay, then we'll move on to the second thing. Before that, there should be thanks from Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria. On behalf of the Placement Office and Natural Science Association, Department of Zoology of St. Joseph College, I thank our speaker, Mr. Santosh, for having shared such an enlightening topic with us. I hope the participants have received a broader understanding on the topic, and we appreciate the effort and time you took to be with us this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity as well.
Santosh, this is Kavya from Zoology Department. We also thank you for taking such a comprehensive kind of talk for this particular career aspects, so that the students are getting into what kind of research, what kind of industry availability is, how they can be prepared for the present scenario. Thank you so much for giving them an guidance and the overview of what they can look up after their graduation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get on to the second session. Maheshwari is here to introduce the second speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I am Arja Maheshwari. I am honored to introduce the second speaker for today, Mr. Avinash Krishnan, who is a large mammal ecologist studying Asian elephants in the Banagata National Park, Bangalore. He undertook his master's in wildlife management and conservation at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. Avinash has over a decade of experience in the field of ecology and wildlife conservation. As an avid writer and a speaker, he has published many research articles and technical reports in popular journals and lectured in conservation forums related to his field of expertise. He has trained numerous students and forest frontline staff on scientific methodologies, human-wildlife conflict management, captive elephant welfare, and anti-poaching efforts in the state of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. He currently works in the capacity of research officer at Arosha, India, a unit of an international environment non-profit based in 23 countries. Today, Sir is here with us to deliver his topic on wildlife career options and opportunities. Over to you, sir.
I think Santosh, you have to stop sharing your screen to facilitate Avinash to start.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I think I'm...
Thank you. Over to Avinash.
Can you hear me? Very good morning to everyone.
Yeah, audible, Avinash. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll just quickly try and share the screen. Is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes. Please proceed.
Okay. Firstly, thank you once again for an opportunity to interact with everyone through the St. Joseph's institution. And also to thank Dr. Jayashankar for giving a title that I perhaps couldn't come up with myself. So like he suggested, that my talk is going to talk about wildlife as a career. Also probably look at the various options and opportunities that are available for life sciences students who are perhaps interested in pursuing a long-term future in this field. And firstly, thank you for the introduction. I think having said that, I basically hold two hats, which is one of being a representative of an NGO, which is based out of Bangalore, and also the Indian context of my international outlook from the organization's perspective. And also, I hold a secondary role as a consultant to the Karnataka Forest Department, specifically to the Bannerghatta division on various projects. So sometimes both my roles kind of overlap, and sometimes they are independent. So this is my identity as a professional. But if you ask me as a person, I'm basically a researcher. I mean, who kind of loves being inquisitive about the natural world, and started off as a natural historian observing forests and wildlife, and basically the whole concept of this profession came to me only because of the fact that I love to walk in the jungle, and that's how my career started in the field of science. But nonetheless, this was the basic background in which I kind of represent my identity. Quickly, I think wildlife conservation is a word that's been used exorbitantly of late in various aspects, various parts of society, as well as globally as well. So just to give you a quick understanding of what it means from the Cambridge Dictionary perspective, is that wildlife in general means anything that is a living form that grows independently of human intrusion. So it's the natural world, and what is found naturally is what is considered to be wildlife. It both includes both plants and animals. And conservation or preservation, I mean, there's a slight disparity in that, but generally what conservation means is that it talks about conserving or protecting plants and animals and natural areas, and especially looking at even things way beyond biotic systems, like looking at buildings and important structures. So conservation is a large term in terms of its application or use in various contexts or textual matter. So we normally confuse the fact that wildlife conservation has to do something with protecting animals or plants, which comes from a human or rather an anthropocentric view. It's not necessarily an anthropocentric view, because that is something that is slightly different from the welfare aspect, which what we also call as animal welfare. So wildlife conservation is pretty much looking at things in a natural way and trying to do something about it in the natural sense. Now, I think my previous speaker was very structured in terms of presenting the opportunities, but I think in the line of work that I do, it's very difficult to categorize wildlife conservation or wildlife as a career in very specific pockets, because in my discussions in various forums, I normally say that wildlife conservation today is a paradigm. It keeps shifting over time, and there are new entities that come into the larger purview of wildlife because of the fact that it has to do so much with different expertise and skill set that is involved. So this is something like a Gantt chart in some sense, where you talk about how wildlife is interlinked with various sectors. I hold an identity in the scientific sector, which is where I identify myself as a researcher. But ideally speaking, the whole science element is also infused with a little bit of education, outreach, activism, rescue and rehabilitation, analytics, management, media and film, policy and advocacy, management in general, sustainability, law and enforcement, and tourism. This is what I can, in a very basic sense, can think of how different domains in the field of wildlife is interlinked, and how every unit of this component has a direct implication in the kind of output that you create. So in terms of science, like I can give you a quick example how science and media and film can be linked, because science is probably responsible in creating information that is substantially true, and sometimes the outputs of science is very limited, rather regulated to textual matter, rather regulated to just publishing in journals and publishing in as information, basically in information warehouses. But sometimes the elements of science, or rather the finding of science or the analytics of science, can be linked to media and film. So you can make a good project, and what you find out of that project can be showcased through form of media and film. So that's how everything could be linked. So science and education that we talk about today, wildlife science and education or environmental education, is again linked to other aspects of this. So this is something that I'll probably be happy to answer questions about the interlinking process, or rather looking at the interdisciplinary links between activism and science, or perhaps policy, advocacy and management. So this is something that I'll probably keep it, but this is keep it to the end of the talk, but I'll probably just give you a fair insight of how these things normally work. So in my domain, I'm basically a scientist, and I think all the speakers are scientists in their own capacity. So it follows the standard procedure of picking up something as basic as zoology or botany, and then perhaps pursuing a career in it. Could be a bachelor's in zoology or master's in zoology or an MPhil or a PhD. But wildlife is slightly different, because the kind of skills that you would need is little more than basic science and abilities of science, or quantitative abilities or qualitative abilities. It also looks at a pragmatic idea of how you look at a problem. Like wildlife today is also looked at with a lot of issues, because I'm sure all of you all are aware of the fact that there's an increasing trend in the depleting resources that we see in the world today. So apart from looking at it as a pure science, we also look at pure science with applied action, which is what I like to call as conservation. So I'll just quickly start with a very small story which I normally share with, and you can probably, as I narrate the story to you, you can probably understand all possible links that can happen as a part of a science project, which we had undertaken as part of the organization. But as participants, I'm sure you'll be able to understand what elements is required in terms of skills to perhaps perceive this context or this kind of small situation, which is what perhaps occurs in our professional setup, where we kind of expose ourselves to various situations or cases like this, and how we apply our skills and how we apply other skills into considering a holistic solution or an outcome of this. So this is a story that happened in 2014 in a village very close to where I work, and this was something that was kind of surprising for us, and totally not in the actual stage of how my professional outlook should be, but nonetheless, this is something that is part of my work as well. Is someone trying to say something, or can you hear me?
Yeah, proceed, Avinash.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay, so sometime back, in 2014, we got a call from a resident in that village saying that she had lost a dog. No, totally not a situation where a scientist would be attending to this. I mean,
Avinash?
Sir?
Avinash, sorry to disturb. Why don't you adjust your microphone, because your voice is breaking.
Sir, I'm so sorry. I'm actually in the field. My network is fluctuating. Is it that bad? I'm so sorry.
Okay, continue.
Okay, I'll try and quickly finish this. Sorry for this.
No. Your voice is breaking. I want to hear you clearly. That's all.
Okay. So this is totally not a normal approach of how we would investigate on a scientific issue, because generally we, as science people, we generally work on a hypothesis. So we assume something and then we try and prove it right or wrong. But in this context, like I said, wildlife is slightly different from the pure sciences approach, where in this case we had a lady who had called us saying that a pet dog was missing. So for us as wildlife researchers, it's maybe an indicator of possibly a new research idea, or maybe perhaps it could be as part of our responsibility working in an NGO sector to attend to these kind of issues, because sometimes we work with stakeholders like the forest department and they want us to extend our expertise. Maybe they could consider this to be a wildlife situation. So we ended up investigating that house and we saw that the dog was missing, and it was more of an investigative analysis kind of a situation where we ended up seeing some kind of indirect evidences of dogs being lifted off a compound wall. So that's a photograph of some marks of how the dog was lifted from a compound wall. And so we absolutely had no clue, because apart from these indirect evidences of maybe pug marks or signs of an animal that came into this property and lifted the dog, there was absolutely no conclusive evidence that we had to say anything about the situation. So we had informed the lady who also had 2 children to stay safe in the house and not come out in the night, and possibly keep her house locked at all times. But that's all we could do at that point, because that's what we are limited to. Honestly speaking, we're not some enforcement agency, but since we also had the forest department, the forest department was able to extend some kind of vigilance in that house and deploy one of their staff members to stay put in that house, so that that family is protected from any kind of outside intervention, including a thief also possibly. But again, that's a totally different legal aspect. But nonetheless, this is what we had done. So, since, like I said, we had some evidences of possibly an animal coming into that house and, taking away her pet dog, so we kind of did something known as tracking, which it's a natural history term, but we also use it very often in wildlife biology. So we were tracking those indirect evidences, and we ended up stumbling on a carcass which was found roughly 2 kilometers from where the house was. So if you could see the map on the right side, you can see the aerial distance from where the house was. The house is located the house is mentioned in yellow plot. And then you could also see on the northwest, the red plot talks about where this animal was found dead. And this was a feral dog. In her case, a pet dog that she had kept it in a house. And this was suddenly found right in the center of a forested area. So again, as researchers, we generally, from our experience working with animals and especially wildlife, we have some kind of experience from our learning and from our teaching as to how carnivores work and how feeding ecology of large cats work. So we ended up deploying technology, which is again something that we generally not trained when we study our courses, but over the period of time, if you look at specific courses, you get trained in these kind of methodologies as well, which I was trained when I did my master's. So we ended up deploying these devices called camera traps, which pretty much take photographs of animals passing in front of them through automated sensors. So we established this in front of the kill, assuming that it was a large cat and assuming that the animal would visit its kill. And this is again a fair understanding of feeding ecology of large carnivores, like especially leopards and tigers and animals like that. So we ended up putting up this, and then we realized, so there's a lot of data that is being collected in the process of what I'm saying. So there's obviously insights about what the animal is and what part of the body was consumed and what we assume as a location. So we understand there could be certain habitat elements that needs to be considered when we're putting up camera traps. There's a whole gamut of data points, if I may use, that is collected from the field. And we put up this camera trap, and subsequently the same night, we deployed this at around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Only 5:36, and then we ended up getting a leopard. So this is a link. So we assume that a large cat like a leopard came into the property, lifted the dog, took it far away from the house, feasted on the kill and then left it there for some time and then revisited to finish off its kill. So it's kind of scary for a household who's not exposed to wildlife, who don't understand leopards, or probably never seen a leopard in the wild and never knew that it would be around their house, literally in their backyard. So as part of the awareness of conservation, so the element of, like I said in the initial Gantt chart where I said that there could be an element of education and outreach. So we went back to Mrs. Gayatri and told her about the whole situation. For her, it was an eye-opener. It was scary as well as insightful at the same time. So we went and told her that, this is what could have happened and you need to be very careful, and you're living in an area where, wildlife also lives. So certain mitigation measures were told to the family, and it was in some sense happiness for her as well as for us that we were able to convince her that these animals do not pose direct threat to people, but sometimes, prey like dog ends up being feral, and which ultimately contributes to the prey base of this large carnivore. So it's important that we need to keep our pet animals, which could be potential prey for large animals that are living in the wild, in much more safe quarters. So this is something that we do as part of the extension of the research component of what we did, and then there's a awareness component towards the end. So that story actually didn't stop after that. It wasn't like a one-off occasion, and for us it was first time. The insight was of a first narrative, where we realized that situations like this are constant, but we didn't have any kind of substantial evidence to establish or conclude on any of these matters using any of the disciplines that we are trained or for the matter acquired. So subsequently, the next month in another location, this was right inside the forest, somewhere inside in the forest, and we ended up encountering a cow. Again, a free-ranging cow, which obviously local communities around forest areas end up sending in the forest for grazing as additional pastures. And we ended up realizing that that cow was being predated by another large cat. So some of my colleagues went into the field, visited the carcass, and it was a fresh kill. And so again, as usual, there was some kind of a link to the previous incident and to this. So we were assuming that it could be a leopard again, but we were not able to understand the frequency of why this is happening. What is the causal factors in why leopards are actually doing this both inside and outside the forest? So we again ended up putting up camera traps. So that's the owner of the cow. Obviously, for him, it's a great loss because that's a milch cow and it would roughly cost him about 35,000 rupees. And unfortunately, that was being killed by a predator and he has no claim over it. So he has to end up leaving it like that. And so we ended up continuing our research on that animal. So we put up camera traps again, and then we again incidentally recorded another leopard which kind of came there to visit its kill. So this was again insightful. This is just a small video that we kind of did. So the camera traps also have these video modes where you can literally collect real-time footages of leopards coming and visiting its kill. And as part of our research project, as part of our research objectives, so we would go in the night and go visit these kills and see how much the animal has consumed the carcass, and try and see if there could be any kind of secondary predation, there could be any kind of feeding insights as to what this leopard is doing. Because it was again for us a novelty. We never knew of all of this, and we didn't have access to this kind of information. So we did all of that, and then after we did come and visit the kill, and the leopard continued to come back and continue to feast on its kill. So we did this for a period of 8 days, and through the 8 days of this sampling, if I may say, looking at feeding ecology of leopards especially, we were getting great insight about how the animal feeds on the carcass, what part of the carcass is consumed more, what is consumed less, how frequent do they come, what are the other secondary predators that could possibly come and feed on the carcass, status of the carcass, the kind of putrefaction that happens. So there could be a lot of insights that could come at the process of just doing a small experiment or a case like this. One of our students, I think from St. Joseph's, did a term paper on this study. So this kind of helps them also as life sciences students to get an exposure in the field of wildlife. So it's somewhere linked as well, even in the academic discipline. So what was interesting is that since the frequency of these events was less than a month, so we obviously started comparing photographs between these two animals. And if you understand animals with pelage markings like leopards and tigers, so those kind of spots or those rosettes on the body are very unique to every individual, just like fingerprints. So we ended up comparing these two animals, photographs, and then we kind of had very similarities in the marking. The rosette patterns were very similar. So through this, we were able to establish the fact that there was this one leopard that was frequently doing this and killing feral prey. So that student Hamsini ended up investigating more on these aspects about this concept called human-leopard conflict, which is an exacerbating concern in the conservation domain, especially for wildlife that comes into contact with people like elephants, tigers, leopards, sloth bear, and all that. So we had, again, we did this with two approaches, the qualitative and the quantitative approaches. So it's important, as I speak, to also kind of recognize and note down that you need to have these kind of skills as well. It's not just a course where you just apply and go ahead and do it, but wildlife is also feel that you need to be good at certain things. One would be to have the ability to look at things with a quantitative and a qualitative ability, quantitative perspective. And also, this takes a lot of walking and spending a lot of hours in the field, so you should definitely be physically fit. So these are not academic requirements, but nonetheless, these are what make you good at what you're doing. Otherwise, it's very hard to survive in this field. So as an outcome of that, we had multiple objectives. Now this follows the standard protocol of science work. So you have objectives, you have hypothesis. So we devised a small project study for her, and she ended up exploring these project objectives. And these were some of the findings. So one of the findings was there was a large amount of leopards operating in areas outside the forest. Now this was again a great insight for us, as well as our partners like the forest department, because what we realized, what leopards would live in forests and remain there, and people would live outside forests, but that was not true. So obviously that means that there is an element of management now. Now no one would be happy of having wild leopards running around their fields and crop area and the living area. So we were able to zone out through some kind of statistical tools, using remote sensing tools to find out which area is more prone to leopard using. So that was one of the findings. Then finding number 2, this was more of a social survey. So this is another interdisciplinary skill that you might want to have when you're doing wildlife, especially research with people and trying to understand their implications on wildlife. So we did a lot of these social surveys. And we realized that a large percentage of people, especially in different villages, were aware about this issue of human-leopard conflict, but some of them have not experienced it, some of them have experienced it, and those who had livestock experienced it. So it comes across to be citing the obvious, literally, but these are factual matters. These are evidential reports of how these things are happening. And then what we also realized that what could be the aftermath of the situation? Why is this situation happening? We realized that there was this huge waste disposal practices that were very rudimentary in village setup. So people would discard their organic waste outside their houses, which in turn would attract rats, and rats would attract dogs or cats, and then obviously then would have leopards. So this one unnatural food cycle that was forming in these village areas because of a very simple human intervention of poor waste disposal practices at the community level. And we also we went ahead to understand what proportion of the waste is burned, buried, discarded, utilized. And then we also realized where the leopard sightings would be more, whether it's in human use areas as well as forest areas. So there are multiple aspects of things that you can bring out. And all of this is only when you have this analytical ability to see these problems from a pragmatic perspective. And then, of course, we obviously, as a wildlife, because in my profile, I'm not just limited to doing research, but I'm also expected to do some kind of conservation, which is also to secure the needs of both people and wildlife. So we ended up doing some sensitization programs in schools and trying to create awareness in children, because most of them were very scared about this, because most of these schools also were located in these leopard use areas. So it was important that the children are aware of these consequences and what they need to do as preventive measures to avoid any kind of conflict. And also, as a responsibility, working with the governments, and especially when it comes to wildlife and forests, most of the wildlife and forests are a mandate of the government. They are the state animal of the government. So it's important that the forest department and the necessary stakeholders are also taken into confidence. So therefore, we devise policy plans, we devise strategic plans, mitigation solutions based on the expertise that we have and the knowledge that we've gathered from the field, to give it to them so that they can take management action. Because we're not allowed to take any kind of management intervention immediately. So these kind of things were also supplied to the forest department. So that's like a whole package of what would, this is like one case scenario of what would include in a career aspect. Like, apart from securing a title, being a researcher or a scientist, these are the kind of real-time scenarios that one would be exposed to in working in the field or working in the domain. So after that, so that's the story. And then we literally realized that we lost clue of that leopard because obviously as research organizations, we limited to projects. So once the project closes, we have no funds and logistics to extend. But again, what was incidentally insightful is the fact that we saw this individual again many years later, 3 years later, in another project where we were doing some kind of occupancy studies on large mammals in Banarghat. And then we ended up recording this guy in the forest. And I'm assuming as I speak, he's somewhere in the jungles continuing to do what he's doing right now. But again, what we really understood it took us 3 years for us to establish his range use, like so-called territory that we talk about. We realized that this individual leopard, who we fondly called him as Rana, had a home range, a territorial range of about 80 square kilometers. And these were again through these plots using remote sensing tools that we were able to analyze. We realized that out of the 80 square kilometer area that this individual was operating, 60% of that area was outside forest. So which is again a great insight for researchers as well as for the forest department to do some kind of subsequent management for this, probably this individual leopard or leopards in general. So, coming back to the context of options and opportunities, I don't have a clear-cut answer because this is so dynamic as a field. So it starts off with being a volunteer, where people come and volunteer and intern at a pro bono level, and then it can probably go to some figures where you can be paid so much a month and you can have so many profiles and titles to yourself, and ultimately this spectrum can vary even in the scientific domain. Like when I started my own career, I started as a volunteer and then ended up pursuing science and doing my master's and so on. So again, it depends on looking at it from a creative context. Now, it can be looked at creativity as a job or creativity as a hobby. So you have both profiles in this domain of wildlife conservation. In the fact that I see many people who have taken it as a career as a volunteer role. So they end up working with projects like this or assisting research groups or research institutions in their labs and in the field or in non-governmental organizations. So the avenues are multiple because this kind of skill sets are also multiple. So therefore, I wouldn't be able to put it in a specific scale and say if you do this, if you get a master's, this is what you're entitled for, and this is what it's not possible in this field. It again depends on the individual ability and the kind of skills that you have. And quickly coming to the top players in the field, from an Indian context, these are the institutions that I've directly worked with, and I know one is the NGO sector, like the WWFs and the WCSs. These are like global, international, of course, even my own organization from an international perspective are largely environmental organizations. So they have multiple positions. When I say multiple positions, I don't mean just to say that they have job opportunities for researchers or people who have science backgrounds, but they also need HR people, they need human resource people, they need creative designers, they need artists, they need different kind of people with different skill sets, but greatly knit into this fabric of wildlife, as a larger domain. And then you have the classical scientific institutions like the Indian Institute of Science, and then we have a premier wildlife institute, which is only in India, called the Wildlife Institute of India. I mean, we at least have one in India now, of course. I mean, the bigger players would be the Smithsonian Institutes and things like that. But in India, the Wildlife Institute of India is considered to be a premier body in the science of wildlife. So they have multiple opportunities, whether it could be starting from a master's up till your MPhil, PhD, postdoc, and positions like that, purely in wildlife disciplines like looking at ecology, biology, reproductive biology, and many other specific domains. And then, of course, we have the global governing body like the IUCN, which is a unit of the United Nations, which again purely concentrates on drafting policies and conventions for wildlife and its conservation, especially. Now, this is again not purely research, but they also look at creating, like a very good example would be the Red List of the IUCN. So they are conventions which ultimately try and bring in the global knowledge on wildlife together and draft conservation plans for the planet. And of course, our very own Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, which is purely a government sector. They have a lot of opportunities for work, and I mean, they again not necessarily limit themselves to science and science-related majors, but they also look at other disciplinary areas like law and enforcement. So they kind of recruit people with different abilities and skills. But again, as a whole, you represent the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, which is a chief player in the government sector. And then, of course, there are multiple universities. I think I just listed the University of Oxford because it's one of the premier bodies in the UK for offering wildlife courses, especially in natural history, in wildlife trade, and even wildlife. When I started off my career, there were only two institutions in India. I mean, one would be the National Center for Biological Sciences, which is one institution which gives you a master's in wildlife, but doesn't require a formal science background. So you don't have to be a bachelor in science to be eligible to apply. But Wildlife Institute requires a Bachelor of Science. But University of Oxford and other universities don't necessarily require a bachelor's level scientific degree. But they have multiple interdisciplinary courses. Like, for instance, I did a course called Wildlife Management and Conservation from the University of Reading. And so you have many interdisciplinary wildlife courses, like international trade and wildlife. You can do a master's in that. Then you can do a wildlife MSc in wildlife ecology, which are much more pure classical wildlife studies. So there are multiple courses that I'm sure you can look online, and there are also specific areas like marine biology and things like that, carnivore ecology. So wildlife courses today have become very diverse. And I'd like to finish with this because as part of the wildlife community, the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, has listed 17 goals to transform the world by 2030. And out of which, if you notice clearly, out of the 17 goals, 6, 7, 8, 13, 14, and 15, along with 6 goals and targets, are related to the natural world and wildlife. So any project or any kind of impact and outlook that you're looking at, from your career perspective, should have these goals being satisfied, which is a treaty that has been signed across all the nations in the world. So there is a mandate in terms of the research or the kind of output or any kind of wildlife research or career that you take, you will somehow substantially have to contribute to the Action 2030. And now, slightly drifting away from the career aspect and in terms of options and opportunities, I also look at wildlife as a fundamental. If you're an Indian citizen, it's one of the fundamental duties of every citizen. I mean, some of us are probably lucky enough to consider it to be a profession. It kind of satisfies our scientific lineage in terms of achieving something or probably contributing to the natural world. But as a student or as an adult or as a citizen of this country, it is a mandate to protect or improve wildlife and natural ecosystems. So there is a moral angle to wildlife as a career as well. So apart from doing other professions and other sciences, it's important to consider it as a fundamental duty, as a duty of an Indian citizen. So with that, I'll quickly end, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Anything very specific? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you, Avinash. Yeah, I think Balaji will moderate the session.
Yeah, thank you.
The session is now open for the discussion. Participants can raise their questions.
I believe there are YouTube questions also. You can pose it, Balaji, from YouTube.
Okay, Likit Krishna from YouTube wants to know about the MSc Wildlife and Management in Kuvempu University.
Well, I think they have one intake every year or 2 intakes. I'm not really sure. You might want to check on their websites. And I think it's fairly straightforward. You need a bachelor's in any science discipline, whether it could be zoology or botany. I think the program is for 2 years, where you do a course with, I think, 15 modules, if I'm correct, which would entitle you with a master's in wildlife biology. Yeah, so that's that. It's as simple as your applications in St. Joseph's College. So you apply, you probably there is a cut-off requirement, and they have an entrance exam as well, an internal institution level entrance exam, post which you'll be selected for the course for 2 years, and then I can also link you to some people who are doing their masters. We have some students who interned with us doing their masters in Kuvempu. wildlife. Did that answer the question, or I mean, is there anything else further to that? No. Was I? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think Balaji, we can take both the questions that were pending for Santosh and also for Avinash. Participants who want to ask their question, please raise your hand, or you can unmute and ask your questions to Avinash.
Hello, good morning, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Suresh. I'm a faculty of biology in a PU college. And many of my students, when I taught degree students, they asked me how to get into the wildlife field after their MSc in a particular subject, zoology or botany. How they can approach. So whether they have to pursue the wildlife course or directly they can enter.
No, they can. It also depends on the vacancies available, sir, because generally what is happening now is preference for wildlife majors at master's level is what most of the organizations are preferring, but they also give preference for people with classical majors like zoology or botany or something at a master's level. The thing would be to honestly say is that depending on which sector you're trying to apply for, so the advice to students would be to try and explore the NGO sectors, because NGO sectors tend to have a lot more opportunities than the government sectors, because government sectors are looking for something known as experience as well, and even some NGOs also look for experience. So my honest advice would be to try and build in some experience, even if you suppose.
Yes, sir.
If they've done just a master's in botany or zoology, my advice would be to try and do an internship with any of these organizations or institutions like IISc or NCBS or WII. They have a lot of internship programs, paid internships and unpaid internships. So you can go there and build a field level experience of at least a minimum of 1 year. Okay. So that kind of like adds on to the gap of not having a master's in wildlife to some extent. I mean, this has worked for many of my students who have done that here and probably got jobs elsewhere as well. And also, in the meantime, there are also a lot of these online courses that are being offered by various institutions, like University of Oxford has got some online courses. My own institution, University of Reading, has got some online courses. These are short skill-building courses for various aspects in wildlife ecology. So to try and enroll for these online short courses, that would also probably build up your profile as a wildlife professional to a fair extent, so that you don't have to like ultimately get into a profession or a profile where you have to learn and unlearn a lot of things.
Okay, sir. I want your contact details. How can I approach or how
you can write to me.
My students?
My email ID is avinash.krishnan@arosha.org.
Avinash Krishnan?
Avinash.krishnan.
Okay.
Sorry, what am I saying? Avinash.krishnan@arosha.org. You can take it from the organizers from St. Joseph's, probably.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It's very informative and also it's inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, there's another question. Is there any, Bani Bhatti asks, is there any institution where we can specifically study ecosystem-based conservation or ecosystem-based management of wildlife?
Like I said, it's very interdisciplinary. There are very few institutions that focus on one specific domain. So what I can think of are some NGOs at the moment who are doing that. Maybe one would be the A-Tree organization, Ashoka Trust for Environmental Education. I don't know what it's called, Research and Environmental Education or something like that. So those institutions have opportunities where they're looking at ecosystem level assessment. And some institutions, for instance, like if you look at Azim Premji institutions, they have projects which are very specific to certain domains. But as far as I know, at an institution level, it again depends on the labs that are conducting research. So the only way to understand that is to write to these individual labs or scientists who are heading these labs in probably the Indian Institute of Science or NCBS or Wildlife Institute of India to check and see if there are specific projects of your interest. But generally, most of the organizations have interdisciplinary approaches. It's not conducive to just focus on one area because in a field like wildlife, you're largely supported by grants. Funding is pivotal in deciding the outcomes of projects. So sometimes we don't have the flexibility to conduct what we want. So we have to go with what the larger mandate of environmentalism or ecosystem is. And one classic example would be the SDG goals. So if your projects or your institutions or your work is aligned to these kind of SDGs, then the chances of you to survive, if I may use that word, is fairly higher rather than just looking at something that is of your own interest. Can you hear me? Did you hear what I said?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Sudden the silence is a little worrying because I don't know whether I could be heard or not.
Don't worry, we are hearing you clearly.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks.
Balaji, any other questions?
No, sir. So there are questions to Santosh sir as well. If he's online, you can take his question also.
Yeah, both of them, both Avinash and Santosh can answer. Yeah, you can. You can pose that question.
Okay. What are the possible careers in botany?
Hello.
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 Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I think I already have a question on what are the careers in botany.
Yes, sir. Shishira Rao wants to know what are the possible careers in botany.
I think Avinash is ready to answer.
No, Santosh, I just recognized you faintly, so I just thought I'd say hi to you.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, one great source is you can get into biodiversity. There are various projects, like various international organizations. So DevNet Jobs is the link that I've given in my presentation that gives you a list of all the jobs that are related to botany people. So that's the best source, I believe. So I think they can check in there.
Okay, Balaji, any further question? Don't give gap. The silence seems to be threatening.
It is very scary.
Hatteza wants to know about the. Hello.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, I wanted to ask you what is the difference between a master's in wildlife from abroad and from India? What career perspectives and perks does one get doing it from abroad?
I mean, it's largely to do with socio-economics, to be honest. I mean, if you could afford a degree abroad, I wouldn't honestly say that if you do a degree abroad, your opportunities are much higher. Because you need to, I mean, again, depends on from your outlook. If you really want to do substantial work in wildlife, then you need to be in places where wildlife is there. And that's what I believed in. I took up a master's in abroad, but ended up coming back to India because I think India is going to be the future for wildlife conservation because the kind of wildlife we have and the challenges we have. So in terms of opportunities, I think it's going to be much higher. But in terms of stability, career prospect, earning more, I think the West has always been an indicator of that. I don't see any kind of significant difference in terms of coursework or the research material or the learning that you would imbibe studying abroad or studying in India. Because India too has a fairly good institutions that provide extraordinarily good courses at a fairly regulated price, which is kind of affordable. So if you're looking at something that is much more sustainable on the long term, then I would always advocate doing something locally. But if you feel that there could be much more opportunities on the long term, and if you want to resettle and study there and be there, then I think doing a course online is doing abroad is always better. But yeah, in terms of opportunities, maybe right now the abroad institutions placements are slightly higher compared to India. I shouldn't be saying this, but generally when you're abroad, the chances are much more easy to get. Here you'll have to earn your own chances. So it again depends on your personality. and also the vision that you have that you want to look at on the long term. So that's my.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Atira Matthew asks, is wildlife degree essential to do PhD in wildlife biology, or is having a biology background is enough?
Avinash, that was for you. I think there's some network issue. Avinash, you can hear us? Okay, if there are any questions, Balaji, to Santosh.
So, hi, can I?
Yeah, Viola.
Hi, this is Viola from the Department of Zoology. It's not a question actually, it's just something I would like to ask Santosh. Basically, there are a lot of online platforms for online courses like the renowned Coursera and edX. So, St. Joseph's College is in association with both of these platforms is offering a lot of free courses for the students on basic, intermediate and advanced online courses. So, what do you think, how important are these in helping a student beyond gaining knowledge? What is the weightage of these online courses, and is it actually something that will, sort of help students decipher their way out of the country and probably trying and getting some good leads?
Yeah, that definitely helps students, because sometimes if they do not really they will not be able to project what they have actually studied in the course, the curriculum. So in such a case, the certification is really very essential. I could give a particular example. The places where they demanded somebody to have experience in handling animals, if somebody has a course already done on such a certification done on animal handling, which would definitely help them. And say life science graduates, they will not have exposure to upstream, downstream processing. So if they want to get into any manufacturing industries and they have produced a certificate by doing some online courses, then that definitely helps. It definitely gives a weightage. It also shows that they are self-motivated and that they would want to continue doing their study. And specifically, IAC is also offering a part-time course. I think it's about 3 to 6 months, wherein people attend courses in the weekend, a few hours, and they get certified. So all these really helps and definitely adds on and gives weightage to the resume while writing the cover letter. It definitely helps.
Thank you, Santosh. I hope this will at least coax the students, because all of these courses are free for our students, and most of them are not taking the opportunity of using it, especially this lockdown time where they have a lot of time also. I mean, time is again subjectual because they have classes, but still I request all the students to take up some course and make use of the opportunity given, because otherwise paying these courses, definitely it is more difficult for students to access them. Since college is giving them for free, please do it.
Exactly. Because EDX or Coursera, I think they have to pay a fee if they have to get a certificate. So if you have a platform, I myself, keep updating myself, keep doing some courses whenever it is available online. And even faculty members from my college, any engineering college here, at least, they are actually asked to have done NPTEL certification, at least 1 or 2 in each semester. So I think it is very, very important that students take advantage of this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's another question, sir.
Yep.
Atti wants to know about the job opportunities in the field of Botanical and Zoological Survey of India.
I think Jayashankar sir will be the right person to answer, because he has worked in the Zoological Survey of India.
It only depends. Zoological Survey of India, it's about being there. That's more documenting animal diversity. Both botanical and the zoological survey record the flora and fauna respectively of the country in different ecosystems. They have their regional centers all over the country, The postings happen anywhere, and that starts from as a technical officer. If you have your masters, there are regular staff selection interviews through which you can get in, or grade of gazetted officer from scientist B, C, D, E up to G, where you will be posted anywhere in India. You got to be specialized in taxonomy of a particular group of animals. That's how you land up being in ZSI. Other than that, you also have to do documentation of the diversity of flora and fauna wherever you're posted. Taxonomy documentation is mandatory. There are museums associated with all these centers where you've got to maintain the profile. The other thing that you've got to do is the service of rendering this taxonomical identification of any samples that come to you from any part of the country. So these are the things. Your basic qualification in MSc, a PhD, and a good set of publications could make you through if you are considered for the interview and further on. So that's any combination with zoology, life science is preferred for the interview. I hope I have answered that. Balaji, any other question?
No, sir.
I'll now request Chandana to give vote of thanks.
Sir, is Avinash sir available?
Avinash sir, we lost.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay, Avinash, come back. Okay. So
Sir,
you can thank
Natural Science Association, Department of Zoology and Placement Office at St. Joseph's College. We thank Mr. Avinash sir for giving us an informative talk, throwing light on wildlife career conflicts and objectives, skills required, and also the courses available. Thank you, sir, for all the information you shared. Sure, the participants enjoyed the talk and gained new insight. Hope to see you in many more webinars and seminars. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Jayashankar. Thank you, Shiv Kumar sir, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you both Santosh and Avinash for sparing time to interact with students to give your views on career opportunities in general for life science students and also in the wildlife field. Anukriti, we have some announcements for the evening session so that the participants keep track and they join us back. Okay, over to Anukriti for the guidelines.
Anukriti, before you start, one second. Thank you, Avinash, and thank you, Santosh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
After a very long time, happy to see you again.
It's really a great pleasure, sir.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You can continue.
There is an announcement for all the participants. Our next session will begin at 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time today, and the certificates to the participants will be sent in a week's time. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our talk. Please rejoin at 5:30.
Also, there will be another link. There's a separate link that will be sent. It will be mailed to all the participants shortly. You got to join using that link. And only if you make it to both the sessions that the attendance is considered for certificate. Thank you for being there, students and participants. Hope to see you in the evening session. Thank you all. We now wind up this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.